Hello, and welcome everyone to today's Association for Manufacturing Excellence webinar titled Lean Management, Lean Leadership, and Leader Standard Work. I'm Jerry Strohmeyer, the Education and Training Program Coordinator for AME, and I will be your moderator. Our presenter today is David Mann, Principal of David Mann Lean Consulting. His consulting, teaching, and coaching experience includes lean transformation in manufacturing, enterprise businesses, processes, and healthcare organizations. David has been a contributor and past member of the editorial board for AME's Target magazine. He also served on the AME Great Lakes Regional Board for 10 years. David is the author of Creating a Lean Culture, Tools to Sustain Lean Conversions. His book was awarded the Shingo Prize for Operational Excellence. It is an international bestseller in its field and has been translated into 6 languages. Before we start, just a couple housekeeping items. You will be in listen-only mode throughout the webinar. You'll see that you are muted on your attendee panel on the right side of your screen. If you have questions during the webinar, please type them into your question area in the attendee panel and click on Submit. We'll review the questions at the end of today's presentation and answer as many as we can. When you log off today, please check your email inbox, and it will be an invitation and link to fill out a short webinar attendee survey. Please take a few minutes to complete the survey today, as your feedback is very important to us to improve future webinars. David has graciously agreed to provide a PDF of today's presentation. We'll be sending that along with a recorded link for a webinar replay to each of you next week. Now I am pleased to introduce David Mann, who will present Lean Management, Lean Leadership, and Leader Standard Work. Take it away, David.
Thanks, Jerry-Ann. Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in today. I'm going to be talking about lean management, lean leadership, leader standard work, as the title indicates, and I'm going to be talking about it in the context, the joint context of lean production and lean management, as the two go together, and we'll develop that as we go through. So that's the approach I'm going to take. We'll also get into engaging executives in lean, which is a matter of great interest to many lean practitioners who are concerned about the wandering attention of executives who had at one time been their sponsors. So starting out, I'll talk a little bit about the nature of lean. If I were to have polled you to say what you thought the nature of lean, it's fundamentally what's it about, a very common answer is it's about eliminating waste. And while eliminating waste is important, going back to Shingo, and this was news to me when I went all the way back to Shingo several years ago, that from Shingo's perspective, lean is fundamentally about finding waste. That is, you can't eliminate it if you can't find it. So lean thinkers characteristically go looking for problems where there aren't any obvious ones showing up. One of the difficulties is, although this seems simple enough, and if you're a lean thinker, you would say, well, of course you would do that. But highlighting problems can be difficult and risky in a conventional organization. It goes against people's habits. Maybe most significantly, it goes against what conventional bosses expect, like David, don't tell me your problems, just make it run kind of thing. That would be a pretty common response when you are excitedly telling your boss about a problem that you found. And one of the implications of this that you learn fairly quickly is that your personal reward or reinforcement contingencies might turn out to be what you hadn't anticipated and don't want. That is, if people aren't interested in hearing your problems, you're probably not going to be rewarded for bringing them to their attention. So because of habit and convention, lean, it turns out, is a lot harder than it seems it should be. Lots of organizations begin the lean journey. I mean, many. In the last 10 years, the number has burgeoned, but very few see it all the way through to sustained gains, defined by seeing improved results on your organization's financial statements. 10 years ago, it was maybe 2%. It's double that now, but it's still less than 5%. So not very many see it all the way through. Even objectively successful lean projects, Six Sigma projects. You could probably fill in any organizational intervention, even when they're objectively successful in their own terms. By far the most common outcome is that they fail to last. And it seems to me with lean specifically, that's where I've been focused on for quite a while. I think the reason why a key reason why lean successes fail to last is that the focus has been on lean tools without recognizing implications for things that managers would need to do differently, because the environment has changed dramatically. But if managers keep on asking for what they've always asked for, because we haven't been smart enough to help them understand that asking for different things could be good, very quickly the lean initiative falls apart. That can happen within days or weeks or a month or two, but the overall experience is the carefully constructed lean design can fall apart very quickly. So lean management addresses the management side of the equation, the behaviors and tools and practices in lean management that sustain and extend the gains from lean production. So lean management, lean production go hand in hand. In fact, I think it can be helpful to think about these two elements, lean production and lean management, as components of a lean ecosystem. Lean production tools improve process stability and performance, and lean management behaviors, practices, and tools bring focus on the process, sustain the initial gains for lean, and maybe best of all is they'll drive further improvement. So that looks like this. This lean production and lean management ecosystem, these two interdependent systems coupled together. You'd start, my advice is do not start with lean management. We'll talk more about that in a minute, but start with the tools of lean. And when you do that, you're going to improve stability in a process. And then immediately bring to bear the tools of lean management. You want to sustain the gains, and importantly, you want to capture problems that remain that were unseen before the initial lean application. And then you want to do something about the problems that you captured. So sustain the gains, capture problems, assign actions for doing something about them. So that's the lean management system. That's that sort of turquoise icon you see there. You'll see that again in a couple of minutes. And then you continue doing that. You use the lean tools when you found a problem. You apply the lean tools, you eliminate the problem, you improve stability, improve performance. You continue with the lean management applications to find more problems. I'm seeing a typo on this page, so there's a defect on my part. You find the problems, you apply the lean tools, you improve stability, and so on and so forth. So this is an improvement trajectory. And the longer you do this, the steeper the incline becomes of getting better and better. And this is not theoretical. This is what practical experience looks like in successful ongoing lean implementations. So you want to continue until you're perfect, and when you are perfect, please give me a call. I'd like to come see it. So there's a value proposition implicit. There's a value proposition implicit here, and the value proposition is a conversation that goes sort of like this. So we apply these lean. You can imagine yourself in this conversation, or at least I can imagine this conversation. So did lean tools eliminate the problem and frustration that you had before we did the lean application? Oh yeah, really. I mean, that that thing hasn't happened in the last 3 weeks. Probably never happen again. So would you like to see this benefit sustained? But absolutely. This really has improved things around here. Well, in the past, what do you think would happen? We expect this benefit to last for the last improvement program that you were involved in here? The answer to that is usually, well, no. Usually they don't last. And so your next question is, well, if it did last, would that make for a better day at work? And the better day at work is an answer to the question that people always have but rarely ask, and that is, what's in it for me? Why should I do this lean thing? Especially if I'm in any sort of managerial capacity, from team leader up through unit or plant manager, talking about the tactical part of lean. It could be a unit of any kind of organization. It could be a technical professional unit. It could be a healthcare organization. What's in it for me? Why should I do this? Why should I do this lean management thing? And the answer is because lean management is what sustains the benefit. It captures the next opportunities for improvement. So there's a value proposition here. People are always they'll always be thinking, but they will rarely ask, what's in it for me? If you can answer that question, you're going to be quite a ways down the road in persuading people that they should try it out, see if it works, that they should follow your advice. So let's take a quick look at the lean management system now. Lean management really brings focus on process. When I was learning lean from bona fide lean sensei, we'd go walking out onto the floor, and he would be muttering under his breath, "What is the process? What is the process? What is the process?" That's what he wanted to focus on. If you're focusing on the process as it cycles, you're going to see whether it's working or not working. The lean management system tools, behaviors, and practices bring focus on the process, not just from a touristic point of view, but to actually grasp the reality of what's going on so that you can do something about it. So there are three core elements here. One is visual controls to bring frequent focus on the health of the process and capture problems when they occur. The second is a standard accountability process to do something about those problems, assign tasks for cause analysis, and then assign tasks for corrective action. The third element is leader standard work. It has high leverage, but it is definitely not the place to begin. Leader standard work then follows up on a process change that was developed from catching a problem on a visual control, taking it through the accountability process and doing something about it. But that change, this newly improved change in the process, that's not going to be sustained unless you follow it up, because that's not the way we've done things around here. And so you've got the force of habit working against you, and you need to counter that with monitoring, reinforcement, and encouragement. That's part of what leader standard work is. So looking at visual controls, the key elements, there are as many visual controls as there are people thinking about what should this look like. But the key elements, I think, are important. That is, what do you expect if you've got a lean process, or even just a partially lean process? You have a basis for predicting what the outcomes of the process are going to be. That's what we expected. Did you actually get it? Did actual performance meet expected performance? If it did, that's great. That would be green. If you didn't, that's an opportunity to learn something. That would be red. So if you didn't get what you expected, record right at the time, sort of right in the moment, what happened, what was going on, what did you have that you didn't want, what did you want that you didn't have. It's the rudimentary problem statement. Visual controls are designed to capture problems that you can then do something about. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for problems. Again, this is, in a conventional world, you don't go looking for problems. If you're successful in a conventional world, you become very good at hiding problems. Here, we want to bring them to the surface so that we can do something about them and improve the process. So if you're talking about a high-speed automated process, you're probably going to be focusing on overall equipment effectiveness. There are 6 big losses in OEE. This is an illustration of what a visual control would look like, or could look like in an OEE environment. And again, you're capturing misses, either lost units or lost minutes, and you're describing what happened that was the rudimentary problem. Here's an example of a visual control in a tact-paced assembly process. Red, you missed. Green, you hit. Yellow, this was this is a photograph of a process that was in consistent, sort of constant revision, and the supervisors wanted to give people credit for being within 5%, and that's what yellow is. Ordinarily, I would say reds and greens only, but it's a matter of judgment. This is a production tracking chart of a different kind. This is where there is no tact, where these are cardiac intervention procedures, healthcare procedures. They're of variable duration. What this visual is doing is capturing things that went well, but it's also, more importantly, I think, in terms of making improvement, capturing things that didn't go well, that then this team of support people, these are radiology techs and nurses, that they could actually do something about. Okay, standard accountability. You have visual controls, you've captured problems. What do you do with them now? You take them to a daily accountability process. In some cases, you're going to be, when the work does not cycle very quickly, you may be doing an accountability process weekly. In higher volume processes, think of hospital emergency rooms, think of most manufacturing plants. For example, think of customer service areas. You may want to do this every day. So an accountability process, it's brief, 15 minutes max. It'll take longer when you start. They'll go more quickly when you get experience doing it. So they're brief, they're timed. You want to have a clock where you're holding your accountability meeting, and you want to be standing up, not sitting down in a chair, that is. So this is a stand-up meeting in or as near as you can get to the work area. Standard agenda would be look at yesterday's visuals, what do we need to follow up on, make assignments, task assignments for follow-up, written in a verb-noun format. This is an action-oriented format because action is the idea. You then review the tasks that are due today. If they're completed, you code them green. If they're not completed for any reason, you code them red. If they're red, you want to ask the person assigned, do you need help? When do you think you can get it done? If there's a longer conversation, that happens after the accountability meeting. The accountability meeting is really simply checking, what do we need to do? Have we done it? Have we not done it? And then moving on. This is an example of what an accountability board looks like. What makes it accountability is that it's got somebody's name and it's got a due date. It's got the task in the intersection of the due date and the name. And if it's done on time, it's green. If it's overdue, if it's late, it's red. People in manufacturing are much more comfortable initially at the start, that is, with accountability boards like this, because they're more used to being held accountable than people in offices are. It's very present. It's more present in manufacturing. I think it's fair to say. But when you understand that you're not going to be shamed because you didn't get something done, it could happen for any one of a number of very good reasons. And you find that you're getting credit for things that you were asked to do that you did do, people get used to this actually pretty quickly. So accountability is to take what you found, take the problem that you found, and record it on the visual control and bring it to a place where tasks can be assigned to respond to that problem. First, to understand what happened, or to develop more information about it, and then following up to do something about that problem so it does not recur. So that these two elements, the visual control and the accountability process, are very closely linked to each other. Think of it, if you have a visual control and you're asking people to tell you what their problems are, and then you don't do anything about them, that's not good. The proposition is, trust me. Tell us the problems, write it down, we'll take action on it. That's whether you ask people to trust you or not, that's what's going on when you ask them to write stuff down. You need to, we need to follow through if we're going to be credible and if we're going to actually produce improvement. So now leader standard work. Leader standard work is very high leverage because it closes this loop on process focus. That is, if I focus on the process and I keep that loop closed, I'm gonna drive improvement and I'm gonna sustain that improvement. So when you make a process change as a result of these steps that we're just describing, when you make a process change, you update your leader standard work because now there's something new that we're not used to doing. And we need to follow up on that. Make sure that people understand, why we did it, to give them the opportunity to, ask you, why are we doing this? I think this is the stupidest thing I ever heard of. So you have a discussion about what the rationale was for making this change. Because, why did we do this is not an unreasonable question. And you have the opportunity to explain it, maybe to ask people to give it a try for a couple of weeks. Typically, if you're doing this every day, by the time you come back, in 2 weeks and you ask people, well, what do you think about this change in the standardized work? They might say, what change? This is just the way we do it. That's the kind of thing you're looking for. So leader standard work seals the loop on process focus and improvement. The intent of leader standard work is to guarantee the integrity of the standardized lean production system, focusing on the process as it cycles. It means being in the production area, no matter what kind of organization, to grasp what is the reality of doing this work. Are people able to do the work? Are they struggling with the work because the work is not well defined or it's been arranged in a way that is not optimal? Grasping reality. It's also observing adherence to standardized work. Think about 10 cycles or 10 minutes, and that would be every person every day. If you're a team leader, it would be one person per team leader every day for supervisors, one person per operations manager per supervisor, and so on. So it's close monitoring up by the leaders who are closest to where the work is getting done, and then it becomes spot checking to follow up as you move higher in the up the chain of command. And this is not just a stopwatch and clipboard monitoring kind of activity. We're not talking about machines here that you are checking the oil on. We're talking about people doing work that we've asked them to do. So you want to talk with them about recent changes or changes that you're contemplating or changes that some other people have suggested. You want to invite them to think with you about further improvement activities. You might want to ask them how their daughter's cross-country meet went yesterday. You want to maintain your relationship with people. You want to invite them in to thinking about the business and let them know that you are sharing your discretion with them to define problems that are worth working on. You want them thinking about those things at a minimum more than they do now in a typical organization. But overall, the intent of leader standard work has much more to do with development and improvement and much less to do with compliance. In organizations where leader standard work is put in place from a, just follow the standard work, don't ask any questions, which I'm sad to say that I've seen happen in more than one place, you're not going to see improvement happening You're not going to be moving forward. In fact, you're probably not going to be moving at all wherever you are at that point. If that's what standard work is about, is, just follow the standard work, you're not likely to see much improvement. So here's an example of this is a team leader, zone leader, team leader, same thing here. In this case, this is, volume manufacturing, and the zone leader's tasks are the same every day, and about 80% of her time is accounted for by the elements in her leader standard work. You get a sense of what those things are here. You've got some things for the beginning of the day, you've got things that you do over the course of the day, you have some things you do at the end of the day, in part to set up for tomorrow. So that would be, this is an example of a team leader standard work. Here's an example of a value stream manager. This is a standard output from Outlook, this trifold format. There's a task pad on the left panel that's programmable if you know how to do it. Some things she wants to attend to every day. There are other things that may just come up once a week, once a month, once a quarter, once a year. Those would be programmed to show up on the task pad on the day that she prints her standard work. Her calendar is in the middle, and you can see that she's using this this leader standard work document as a working document, as a diary of her day, things that she needs to follow up on, calculations that she needs to make. That's the sort of thing that people ask her, what are you, Jane, what are you doing? She can show them, this is, you have standardized work, I have standardized work. I'm following my standard work. It would not be unusual, and it's not a bad idea, to post copies of, these would be blanks. They're things that you may be noting on your standard work that are not things that would be for broad consumption, but posting blank versions of standard work so people have a sense of, we're all trying to follow standards here. We're all trying to be consistent. So leader standard work. So this raises a question about being process dependent or being person dependent. So lean systems seek to be process dependent. Processes are well defined, processes are followed. When we follow the process, we should get the outcome we expect. If we don't get the outcome we expect after following the process, then there's something going on that we need to understand better that could be potentially an opportunity for improvement. But we're talking about people here. So these are our organizations consist of a lot of individuals, and in human systems, at some level, a person has to monitor and reinforce consistent adherence to define processes. Leader standard work defines this monitoring and reinforcement, and there's overlapping content between levels of leader standard work that help guarantee the system's integrity. So if the team leader is following up on adherence to standard work as well as the other elements in the team leader standard work, the team leader supervisor is going to be doing the same follow-up with one person in that team leader's area. So there's built-in redundancy here. That's part of guaranteeing the system's integrity. But the ultimate integrity of the system depends on supports by executives. So what about executive standardized work? And more broadly than this, I would relate that I've had conversations with lots of internal lean leaders, and these are the kinds of, here's a direct quote. This is the kind of thing that lean leaders are experiencing these days. So this was the lean leader in this shop, as well as the operations VP, and this is a precision machining operation. It's an excellent shop, both in terms of how they ran and in terms of their lean management applications. So what he's saying is, you know, I've seen lots and lots of people come through, you know, come through the place since we started doing lean management in 2008. This was written in 2014. The majority, I'm going to read this, the majority of lean champions that came through confided in me that getting their executives on board was very difficult, and that they were concerned that all the hard work of their teams would go to waste if they could not garner support from leadership, ownership of their organizations. So this is a big problem, and I want to tell you that I experienced this problem myself. I worked for a long time at Steelcase in Grand Rapids, Michigan, office furniture manufacturing company, and we had a lot of lean activity going on, and I was the leader of part of that lean activity, and our work was supported by 4 of the corporate officers at that time, 4 of 8 of the CEO's direct reports. So half of the CEO's direct reports are our executive steering team, and we'd been doing projects that is helping others, coaching others in the organization to do lean projects, and this was at a point where we had done about 50 of them. Helped with about 50 of them, and they were very successful. We were cutting process time in half, cutting errors and rework in half. I mean, you know, these were effectively dealing with problems that had bedeviled the organization for as long as I had been there, and probably longer. And these were some of the same problems that I was exposed to when I joined the organization 20 years earlier, and they were still problematic. And these were the kinds of things that we were helping the organization be effective at resolving. So a successful program of lean implementations, we Gemba walked our executives because we wanted to keep them involved, wanted them to know what was going on, what the projects were. They knew what the results were. And it turns out that at a regular meeting with my boss, who was one of these 4 executives, she tells me that we'd been doing this about 12 months or so, 12 to 18 months. We had great success, but what she told me is, David, you have a problem. You're losing our interest. You need to find a way to involve us, speaking of her executive peers and herself, you need to find a way to involve us in this activity, or we're gonna find something else to support. So we were Gemba walking them. They were canceling the Gemba walks. They'd canceled exactly 50% of them, none of which were rescheduled. They wanted to support lean. They didn't know how, and we weren't helping them figure out what it was they needed to do. So I went back to our team. I thanked my boss for this very valuable feedback. Hard to hear, but valuable. I went back to our team and told him what had happened in this meeting with my boss, and I said, we need to understand. So who are these people? Why are these Gemba walks being canceled? Who are the people that we're working with? And we had all been in the organization for, I don't know, a minimum of 10 years. It wasn't that big a place. We knew the people. We knew our executives that were Gemba walking. They were not strangers to us. But we needed to ask ourselves, what do we know about them? And by the way, we need to think about them as our customers. What we're offering, plainly, is not something they find valuable, or they wouldn't be canceling. So what do we know about these people? Well, they're bright. They're very quick studies. And I would guess that this list of characteristics, I would be surprised if it doesn't, if most of it doesn't apply to your executive as well. bright, quick studies, competitive, highly achievement-oriented. These are people who've probably gotten an A on every test they've ever taken. You know, they're the people who set the curve in all those classes that you would, you know, grind your teeth in. They were action-oriented. They were very removed from having really any opportunity for hands-on influence, and they were really thirsty for that. What they dealt with on a regular basis, you know, were Excel reports, PowerPoint presentations that were abstractions of the reality that was going on in where the organization actually did the work that produced value for its customers. So they were thirsty for hands-on. They expected some staff prep work. They wanted to know what they were getting into. They didn't want to be embarrassed, you know, being taken out to a place that they didn't know anything about or didn't know the language that people were using, right? So these were things that that we thought we knew about them, and they very much wanted to drive improvement. They were in a position to set strategy, but they were not in a position to do very much about getting that strategy to take hold and actually produce improvement. But they were very focused on that. So we took the time, and it wasn't very difficult to answer the question: so who are these people? What would they find valuable compared to what we're offering? And so here's the comparison: what we were providing and what a better customer value would be for a new Gemba walk process. So we were putting executives in a passive role. We would take them out to an area where there was a project. People would yammer at them, or worse, they'd you know, show them PowerPoint slides. It was not very interesting to them. You know, we'd be talking in their ear, you know, using technical terms with which they were not familiar, not helpful. They were unprepared to participate in the Gemba walks. They were in a passive position, unprepared to participate. They had low confidence in their lean knowledge. They were uncomfortable discussing lean. They felt incompetent when they were out on the floor in these areas. And the whole exercise was not meaningful to them. It was boring. It was somewhat embarrassing, and it was a waste of time to them. So we set out to design something that would be more effective. We wanted it to be an executive-driven experience. We wanted to put them in a position of having to get the answer so that they could ace the test, which they're motivated to do. We wanted to have some good staff preparation for them so that they were ready to participate and lead the Gemba walk, not be a follower, be a leader in the Gemba walk. So they needed to be ready for that. We wanted them to be confident observers in Gemba. We wanted them to be comfortable coaching lean and coaching lean management, particularly in Gemba. And we wanted them to feel competent in the lean management system. The lean management system really is the key here. And we wanted them to see it as a valued investment of time and something that they actually enjoyed. So that's our spec. Here's what we did. We used Gemba worksheets and a new executive Gemba walk design. I'm going to show you a photo of a worksheet, and they're available for free from my website. So we provided a worksheet for each element of the lean management system. So we decided that from our assessment of our executives, they didn't want to learn to be lean implementers. They had us and people like us to worry about that. They wanted to have a sense of what's happening. Are the real things happening where these projects are going on? Do they reflect the lean strategy that we've been persuaded to support? And do they reflect an understanding in the chain of command from me, that is the executive, down to the person at the front line, that the chain of command has been effective in with transmitting the message of lean and the reason for doing these things. So what's the integrity of their chain of command? So the worksheet, which I'm going to show you in a minute, this is a bit out of sequence perhaps, but the worksheet provided an experience that was process dependent, predictable, and repeatable. We might be Gemba walking them in different areas on different elements of lean management, but the process was always the same and the format was always the same. That came from the worksheet. The structure of the Gemba walk put the executive student in control. That is, they had questions that we'd highlight for them when we handed them the worksheet that they were responsible for answering. So they're the student, get the answer. The worksheet represented the staff work. It wasn't very much, but it was enough. They knew what they were looking for. They had observations to make, questions to ask in conversation. And again, these are bright, quick study people. They were ready. They found themselves completely prepared with just these worksheets. The worksheet provided an agenda for clear content focus. And there's a test implicit in the worksheet that underscored learning, and I think was a big factor in making the experience personally meaningful, because these are people who wanted to get it. These are people who wanted to get an A. These are highly competitive, highly achievement-oriented people. When we ask them, so how do you think this area did in visual controls, and they tell us what they thought, what they wanted to hear from us is, you've got it, as opposed to, well, let me tell you what I saw and where the gap is between us. So let me go ahead. Here's the worksheet I'm talking about. This is the one for visual controls. This is a good one to start with. I hope you can see this, and if you can't, you can. It's easily accessible online. There's a brief statement of intent. There are diagnostic questions. We would typically highlight 2 or 3 given the area and given the state of learning of our executive student. They would make observations, have conversations, develop information, and then they would make a rating on this self-describing 5-point rating scale, and make some notes as to the rationale for that. So, walking off the floor, we'd then ask them, so how do you think this area looked on visual controls? And the first time, typically, what they would say is, well, yeah, I saw boards up there. They look, they look pretty good. They were clean. There were, items written on them. Looked like they were up to date. I'd say pretty good. Like, maybe a high 3, maybe even a 4. And our response at that point would be, oh, David, no good. Not literally, usually, unless we knew them really well. But we'd say, well, I rated him actually a low 2. So right there, when they learned that they did not pass the test, that they didn't do well on the test, you have a 90-second teachable moment to tell them, this is what I saw, and these are the kinds of things you should look for. So you have a brief conversation. That's all the time you're probably going to have for it. But the next time you go out with that executive looking at visual controls in a different area, in about 90% of the cases on their second trial, they would go out, they'd have the questions, they'd make the observations, they'd make their notes, they'd come back as we're walking off the floor. So how do you think the visuals were in this area? And they would very typically say they would rate it the same way we would, because they'd learned to see, they'd learned to assess this element of the lean management system. And so at that point, especially if the visuals are not very good, they can start Gemba walking subordinates in their organization in this same area, and reinforcing the expectation that we want you to understand this stuff, we want you to support this stuff, and we want you to use these tools. This is important for our lean strategy. So they can do like an elevator coaching session with their subordinates that they're coaching through, and then they're now Gemba walking with. And they if they continue Gemba walking in a different area of the in the same subordinate's responsibility 2 weeks or a month later, and they see the same problems, then it's time to have a different conversation with their subordinate. So the executives have two managerial responsibilities that are unique to them. They're responsible for the integrity of their chain of command and the fidelity with which the lean strategy is passed down. This is a version of policy deployment, I suppose you could say, although it's structured differently. The integrity of the chain of command, that's their responsibility and their responsibility alone. And they've now signed up with the CEO for their 3 or 5% year-over-year improvement in whatever their measures are. And they're relying on lean to produce that improvement for them. And now they're going down to the floor and they're able to judge for themselves the effectiveness of their lean strategy and whether they need to do something about it. So going back to this slide here, and excuse me for going backwards on you, the proposition is, and the proposition to the executives, not with this graphic, but with something similar. The proposition is, if the lean management system is healthy, then the lean production system is going to be healthy, whether it's lean production in an office, in a manufacturing plant, in a hospital. If the management system is healthy, you can be confident the production system is healthy. So we want to teach you to become proficient assessors, to master the assessment of the lean management system, being confident that if the management system is healthy, first of all, it relates to your managerial responsibilities that other people don't have. The integrity of your chain of command and the health of with which your lean strategy is being executed. That if you know how to assess the lean management system, you can go out and judge for yourself the health of the underlying lean production system. And if you need to intervene, you have the information directly that you can use to intervene. So using the worksheet then, I'm going to hand you the worksheet. You're the executive. I'm going to hand you the worksheet. We're going to go out to the floor. I'll tell you a little bit about the project if you don't know anything about it, so that you can ask your questions and make your observations in context. So this is putting the executives in an active role. This upper left corner of the slide, you're telling them, we're walking out on the floor, hey, we're going to look at visual controls this time. You might want to look for or ask about these 2 or 3 or maybe 4 questions I've highlighted. So they've got the preparation that they need in the worksheet. They know the questions to ask, the things to look for. Let them drive the bus. And when you're walking off the floor, then you're comparing ratings. How do you think they did? And you either have a teachable moment, or you can give them a gold star and tell them they've got this one, and you're going to move on to the next dimension of lean management next time. So summing this up quickly, lean production and lean management are interdependent. That interdependence is really captured in the value proposition, I think. If you like the gains from lean production, lean management is going to help you sustain them. If you start with lean management, there's no gain to be sustained, so lean management is just by itself, as a standalone, is just another bureaucratic exercise. But together they create and sustain the better day at work. It's sustained and ongoing improvement, so that's important to people. The value proposition depends on timing. You want the lean gains first, and then immediately lean management to sustain them and drive further improvement. Leader standard work keeps the loop closed. The value proposition for executives, however, is fundamentally different, and it supports those unique managerial responsibilities I was just talking about. It empowers executives to judge firsthand the integrity of their chain of command and the fidelity of execution of their lean strategy. So if you want more detail on this, you can find it in the 3rd edition of Creating a Lean Culture, or feel free to email questions to me. I'm not trolling for consulting opportunities. But if you've got questions about this and your application of it, I'd be happy to do what I can to help. So that's the webinar, and let me turn it back to Jerry Ann and see if there are questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, David. And now we will review any questions. So if you do have any questions, please submit them on the right side of your screen. Here's one. Just to clarify, Gemba worksheets are there to help executives get more comfortable with using lean in their company, right?
Broadly, yes. More comfortable, but actually able to do something about what they see in lean practices in their company. They're learning to assess it, and when the assessment is not good, that indicates that there's action that they need to take. That is that they need to be in contact with their internal lean people. They need to be in contact with the subordinates in their organization and reset expectations about what are we supposed to be doing here with the lean tools that we've been working with.
Okay, great. The next question is, executives typically pay close attention to financial reporting. Where is the link between lean activities and financial results being discussed?
Well, lean is the result is that if lean is effective and sustained, it will produce results that show up on the financial statements. But you have to, if you're an executive, you have to take that on faith for a while because those results don't show up right away. It may take, in my experience, it can take, a year, couple of years, 2.5 years, 3 years to see those results on the financial statements. So while you're waiting for those, you want to feel confident if you're an executive that the lean applications that we've put in place are healthy and working and producing results at lower levels in the organization. Being able to assess directly firsthand the management system and to judge firsthand what people tell you about the degree to which they've seen improvement in their areas from this management system, production system, ecosystem, these two interlocking, interdependent systems, that the executives will have some confidence that if we stay with this, we will see results that are sustainable and that we can feel confident in the long run. But if you're trying to sell someone lean as a quick shot in the arm for the income statement or the balance sheet, that's probably not a good idea because it probably is not going to happen quickly.
Okay, great, thank you. Here's another one. If we have a stalled lean initiative with physical systems in place with operators, but not showing in operator actions, is leader standard work a good next step, or should we do something else first?
So you've put the tools in place. I'm sorry. This is what I think this question means. You put the tools in place, so you have operators, frontline people working in a different way, following the lean applications that you've implemented. But you're not getting much in the way of improvement, engagement on the part of the operators. If I understand the question correctly, what I would do would be to have this, would be to put in place with some advanced plan for what you're going to do, but I would put in place visual controls, invite operators to tell you when they experience interruptions, frustrations, and delays. When the actual output doesn't meet the expected output, if it's readily quantifiable, to tell you what the problems are. Those problems are among the best next places to focus on for process improvement. But before you put the visual controls in place, you need to have given some thought to how are we going to deal with these problems that we don't know what they are, but we know that they're there. They're below our radar, but the operators know what they are. We need to have some resources in place or identified to work on these problems, to take them to an accountability process. Who are we going to assign to do some cause investigation and then implement some corrective action? So you've got to have the resources to respond to problems once you invite people to start identifying them for you. And then so the leader standard work then comes in as maintaining. The first element would be maintain the visuals. Go in and initial them every hour or two, depending on the speed your process cycle's at. Lead the daily accountability process, and update your standard work, which will have other things on it as well. Typically, update your standard work so you're following up in station 3, because we've made a process change in station 3 based on a problem that we captured on the visual control and acted to improve in the accountability process. Now we've made a change. Now let's monitor the change, reinforce people for doing it the new way, ask them how they might think about doing it better. So if you have the tools in place, but you don't have leader standard work, it's probably the case that you don't have any of the management system in place, and that's what I would suggest you turn to.
Okay, great, thank you. And you were correct in the understanding of that question, so perfect. And looks like we've got one more question. How detailed should standard work instructions be? Do they get down to the nuts and bolts, or is it more an overview like a value stream map?
When you're starting out, so no one, your team leaders, your supervisors don't have leader standard work. They're not sure what they're supposed to do. It can be helpful to be fairly detailed for them. As your leaders get more experience with leader standard work, their leader standard work can become a bit more general. But remember, when people go on vacation, leader goes on vacation, it's got a promising backup. You want to be able to hand her leader standard work that has enough detail so that she can grasp what it is she's supposed to do and be successful at it. So even at the most general level, they should be relatively specific. You can, if you can make it out on the slides, those are a couple of examples of those are both fairly mature examples of leader standard work. If you can't read them on the slides, email me. I'll see if I can get you better copies.
Okay, great. Well, one just jumped in. This will be the last question. You mentioned leader standard work is not compliance, but within LSW. Is auditing is a form of compliance, but auditing is more where we continuously improve. Can you elaborate?
Well, I think of auditing as compliance. I would not say that compliance is a bad thing, and that when you're monitoring adherence to standardized work as part of your leader standard work, that you're looking for compliance, but you're going beyond looking for compliance. I'm not standing behind you while you do your work, watching you do your work, and then putting a check in a box and moving on to the next person. I want to engage you as someone with whom I want to share my two responsibilities. And my two responsibilities as a leader, broadly speaking, are to run my part of the business and to improve my part of the business. I want to engage you so that you're spending some time. You may spend, half of your time thinking about your children and your boat, and maybe another quarter of your time thinking about your next vacation. But 50 to 25% of your time, I'd like you to be thinking about how can we improve the business? So you want to engage, part of leader-centered work is engaging people on a person-to-person level and not just focusing on compliance with the process, but about inviting people to join you in thinking about how can we make the process better? How can we make our organization stronger? How can we make our jobs more secure? So they're related, but they are not the same thing. And compliance is about sticking with what you're already doing. Leader-centered work is about adhering to the standardized process, but understanding that the standardized process is only the best way that we know how to do things for now, and we know that there are opportunities to make it better. We just are not sure what they are. Please help us find them.
Okay, great, thanks. And unfortunately, we've run out of time for additional questions. So any questions that we did not review, I'll send them to David and we'll email you a response. And thank you very much for your participation and understanding. And thank you, David, for a very insightful presentation. This brings our webinar to a close. Our next scheduled webinar will be on Friday, May 6th, titled Value Stream Mapping for Office and Service with Drew Locker. Please visit AME.org under the AME Events and Training tab for more information and to register. Please don't forget to fill out the short survey that will be in your inbox. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and have a productive day.